Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to release some episodes that have to do with the hobby dinners, the two hobby dinners I had this past week that were invitation only. And it's the 5th year I've done that, but I stuck a microphone in the middle of the table so that we could capture some of the remarks. And I think you'll find some of those of interest. When I do those episodes, they're either going to be titled Vintage Dinner Convo or Modern Dinner Convo. The two dinners, Monday night was vintage, for vintage serious collectors, people involved in the industry from the vintage angle. And then the Tuesday dinner was for those who were coming at it from a more modern perspective. And there were a few people from out of town that came to both. So I will let you know who was there. When I'm doing these episodes that are chopped up conversations within these dinners, the audio is not very good, and but it's still there's some interesting back and forth. I probably won't be giving my typical sponsor recitation of my 7 sponsors, because in many cases more than half of them were in the room in each case, I think. So again, chopping them up into 15-minute-ish topics and episodes that'll sprinkle out over the next couple of weeks. Forgive the bad audio. This is one case where I'll probably need to embellish the show notes. And so I usually like to just say, here's the episode and here's the person I'm talking to, or here's what we're talking about. But there were respectively 16 and 15 people in the room, all of whom are opinionated and had interesting things to say. So I'll try to give you some help on how that came down. As I said, the 5th annual, probably do it again next year. It was a lot of fun. I want to thank the people that came in from out of town, as well as the people that came in from across town. In fact, this was the dinner last year, a year ago in early 2019, where I just floated the idea about doing a podcast. I may have actually said something the year before, but they were encouraging. And again, some of my good hobby friends were here, as well as some new friends. And the discussion is, even though I'm trying to moderate it, it can take on a life of its own. And we dealt with interesting topics each evening. So you'll see those over the next couple of weeks. But just as a short episode here, let me just give you a quick heads up who was there at the vintage. Jerry Adamek, who's a big Cleveland Indians guy. I originally knew him when he lived in Cleveland, and when he lived in St. Louis, but lives in Dallas now, and he's a longtime national dealer. Jeff Allison, he used to work for me, and is now not working in the hobby. But Andy Broom, who's the chief and primary vintage grader for BGS. Ray Cherry, longtime friend and vintage collector, a lot of 50s and 60s football and baseball sets, and known him since for almost 50 years now, I guess. Tim Getch, CEO and founder of ComC, was here. Jordan Hagedorn, the football agent. Chris Ivey, head of Heritage Sports Auctions. Eddie Kelly, who did ProLook, has done, worked for me, has done a lot of stuff with TriStar. Great guy. Doug Cale, same thing, worked for me, no longer working in the industry, but just a wealth of experience, and not just vintage baseball, but vintage, a lot of stuff, including non-sport. He was our go-to guy. Rich Klein does a little bit of everything, but certainly his heart's in vintage, and now working for ComC, helping them identify the tricky stuff that sometimes is coming from me. Shane Leonard, again, long-time friend and kind of collector / dealer here in the area. Leon Lucky, head of the Net 54 forum for people that like pre-war cards and want to talk about them. Stefan Loeffler, about the cards, podcaster, very knowledgeable, big Minnesota Twins, Washington Senators. David Porter, whose collecting interests are vintage, but his job is he's the brand manager at Panini for basketball. But, used to work for me and at our company, and great guy. And finally, Paul Rogers, who's at one point, I don't know that he still is dean of the SMU Law School, but an attorney, sharp guy, and an author, but an advanced collector as well. So he had some great stories. And on the modern side, just quickly going through this, Dane Conan was here, down from Wichita Falls. Dynasty Breaks, been on the podcast before. Joe Davis, I actually recorded some episodes with Joe. Got baseball cards, came over from Atlanta. Brian Fleischer, head of pricing at Beckett. it. And so I totally understand the stress of his job because I used to have it. Tim Getch was here again, ComC. Jordan Hagedorn came in from out of town, so he also was here both evenings. The football agent Keith Hauer, now at Panini, but worked at Beckett Publications for I think more than a decade. Rich Klein was back again, coming across town. Eric Norton of Fat Packs fame was here. Always enjoy getting together with Eric. Dave Slipka, again, he's been on several times. Great guy. Rob Springs has been now with Panini, but used to work with us over at Beckett Publications. Don Spence, a personal friend, as well as a very, very advanced collector, way more on the vintage side, but he had a conflict on Monday, and it turns out he actually has some interest in a few modern cards. And then Tim Trout, who again worked for Beckett Publications, now at Panini, and doing some really good stuff there, as well as Joe White, whom I see at some of the local shows, who's doing a Panini customer service and bringing a friendly face and demeanor to that. And finally, Jeff Wilson, who's started this sports card investor podcast, which is doing great, and I enjoy listening to it and recommend that you do too. So we had robust discussions both nights, and over the next couple weeks, you'll see it. If you see Vintage or Modern Dinner Convo, something, that will be what that'll be about, and you can listen in carefully for the conversation. So thanks for hanging with us, and look forward to many more episodes together.